Albuquerque has been declared the, quote, late-term abortion capital of the U.S., end quote, by Operation Rescue, bringing a flood of protesters to the city to join local groups opposed to the practice. They are trying to get enough signatures to force a citywide vote banning it. But their in-your-face tactics brought criticism from many for using the Holocaust and Intolerance Museum as a protest site, as well as the private home of a doctor. Rob, the county is now considering the law similar to the city of Albuquerque banning protests in private homes. And this is part of the response that we have seen from this situation of teenagers coming in. Let's start with the response first. The mayor has weighed in. Is the county right to follow this? Is that much ado about nothing? What's your thought on that first?
No, I think generally speaking, it's probably good to have a ban on personal properties or having protests in front of personal properties. However,
is that a free speech issue at some level? Or?
I think it is,
okay.
But I mean, it is sort of a cloudy issue. But I would point out that in 2011, Occupy Wall Street people brought in buses, 14 buses, to a guy's house in Maryland because he was a Bank of America lawyer. I didn't see a whole lot of screaming and yelling about that.
And there have been protests at Dick Cheney's house over the years.
But I think what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I think that especially if you've got your family there, your kids there, if you want to protest in front of the Bank of America building, that's one thing.
Sure, fair enough. On this idea of the tone and tenor of the protests, I mean, some cities are used to crazy on their street corners all the time. I cannot remember a situation here in Albuquerque we've had people trying to appropriate the Holocaust for any issue at all. When you first saw that, what was your initial gut reaction?
I thought PR mistake definitely on that one. I think that from the political standpoint, I think this is something that Mayor Berry would just as soon have go away. When you're talking about abortion protests, any kind of hot button issues like gun control, that sort of stuff, that gets people riled up. And I think Mayor Berry is the presumed favorite in this race. I would think, if I was his political consultant, you want to have a low-key race going into October. You don't want people getting fired up.
And on that note, interestingly, the signature situation, Laura Sanchez, our colleague here, said some weeks ago they may or may not make the number. It looks like they may make the number, but not in time enough to get on the electoral ballot, as Rob just mentioned. Is that a break for the mayor by not being on that ballot?
I don't know. We have Albuquerque, like Santa Fe, has really low turnout in just city elections, right? So, maybe that would have brought more people out. Whether those people would have gone for the mayor kind of seems like it's a political alignment that might help him, but it also doesn't sound like he has too much trouble, aside from the APD thing.
Sure. So but I think if something like this happens, that kind of reshuffles the deck.
Right.
And if it gets people fired up, that's probably a net minus for Mayor.
Sure. We'll come back to you on that one in a quick second, Alexa. But Tracy, the idea again of the tone and tenor of the protest, does that work for Albuquerque? Are they moving anybody in their direction by using these tactics?
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah. I think the point needs to be made that likening this to the Holocaust and sort of invading the Holocaust Museum is just really beyond the pale. And then also, it was revealed that a lot of the people who were at the protest were teenagers who were bussed in from somewhere else. And just, as a citizen of Albuquerque, where we have people in Albuquerque who make our laws, I'm kind of offended by that. So I don't think that helped their cause at all.
On the idea of them missing the ballots, another angle of this, just talking about with this Alexa, is the idea that the mayor's appointee, the city clerk, did not in fact check those signatures in time purposely. I'm being very careful here, but some are saying purposely to avoid getting this on the ballot for the October mayoral election. Does that hold any credence for you?
I don't see any evidence of that.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah. Does it serve the mayor, to have this as a special election where maybe 6% of the populace shows up for this thing and he avoids the whole matter altogether? Is this better for him?
I think it's just a headache. It's going to be a headache consistent, and it's not going to go away. There will be a contingency of folks, residents of the state or the city will say, look, we just don't like outsiders coming in.
Right.
I mean, it happens every time when people move here, transplants, and I think that's how this is going to be framed. This is this is an attempt to make a national debate and localize it here, and that's going to be the argument. Now, whether it stays and whether it passes, that remains to be seen.
Let's talk about their goals here, though. If the goal of this group is to stop late-term abortions. Are they on to something here? Is there a sense that perhaps there's a silent agreement somehow in this city that a lot of folks may not be aware of, that they perhaps are being supported more than we might know outside of the tactics, that abortion's just a difficulty? What does that do to the politics of abortion here?
You know, it's interesting because what we're seeing are the same attempts in various state legislatures doing the same thing. And I think when the way it's framed, people say, well, yeah, I don't have a problem banning up at 20 weeks, whatever it is.
Sure.
Or even going further. And I think the group has seen successes in other states. So they're identifying possible places where they could be successful. And Albuquerque is on the list.
Right. Would you agree with that, Alexa? It does feel like something is behind this that's targeted and well thought out.
Yeah, it's definitely a national kind of strategy. And in fact, we interviewed someone for a story who was saying that this is part of trying to pass laws in spite of Roe v. Wade, which of course is the famous Supreme Court case that allows for abortion.
Yeah.
And then additionally, when you look at polling on this, it's much easier to get support for a limited ban rather than an all-out ban. So instead of having this conversation of yes or no abortion, we have, well, how about we just limit it slightly? I think voters are more likely to be like, that's okay, we're not banning it outright.
Interesting that you say that, considering what's happening in Texas and other places where providers themselves have been shrunk quite a bit through their legislature and their governor, certainly. But again, I have to ask again, for here, we have a good number of Catholic folks in this state who have issues with abortion and issues with late-term abortion, certainly. Do you think is folks going to change the conversation here somehow on this? Coming up to our legislature? You know, what are the effects here?
Well, these bills come before our legislature every year, and you know, they don't have a lot of success, and so I think that's also the more localized approach, you know, going from city to city. I don't think this type of approach would work in Santa Fe because we just have a different voter base than Albuquerque does. But it could, you know, and sometimes there's the Chinese water torture effect of these kinds of things. When you talk about it enough, it could
That's
happen.
right. Would you, a little bit left, would you agree with that too? It's being elevated to some certain level. People are probably not even paying attention before now understand the issue.
Yeah, because you know the breaking point is that a majority of people, I think 60% in a Quinnipiac national poll of women, said that they are generally against abortion after 20 weeks. Even in Sweden, in you know, hardly a Bible Belt area, you can't get an abortion after 18 weeks. So it's an area there that most people are uncomfortable with when you're talking about late-term abortions.
Yeah.